Alchemy is considered to be one of the early branches of natural philosophy, shaped in the first centuries AD under the influence of the Alexandrian school. And although the old and new ideas were indeed united in a unique synthesis there, the Alexandrians were not alchemy's creators. Rather, they collected and organized the texts of the Corpus Hermeticum, which have given alchemy a kind of spiritual and philosophical identity. In addition, one of the main inspirations for the alchemists can be found in Aristotle's much older works, namely in his idea of prima materia, or first matter, from which arise the four basic elements of life: fire, air, water, and earth, which in various proportions make up everything we know. Perhaps no other field has been subjected to as many speculations and fundamentally different interpretations, but still, we can confidently declare that alchemy is a continuation of an ancient mythology, where the symbolic and psychological content of legendary characters is replaced by the somewhat more universal notions of the chemical elements. Carl Jung explicitly emphasizes alchemy's timeless relevance in the following words: "The world of alchemical symbols definitely does not belong to the rubbish heap of the past, but stands in a very real and living relationship to our most recent discoveries concerning the psychology of the unconscious. They are not metaphysical speculations, but, as we would expect, symptoms of the uniformity of Homo sapiens." The various ways of interpreting alchemical processes are integrated in the very name of the science, given by the Arabs to denote its Egyptian origins. And although Egypt was called Chem, if we were to dig a little deeper, we would find out that the name Chem came from the word which the Copts used to call the dark sand in the Nile Delta. And further knowledge would help us understand that they used the same word to designate first matter. Here's how we encounter different levels of interpretation even before we have started investigating the actual art of alchemy. Today, we can confidently call it an art, since in the late Middle Ages the science of chemistry separated itself from alchemy. Although this royal art has been quite mythologized, it has given the world significant practical benefits, such as the creation of pharmacy by the Arabic alchemists in the 12th and 13th centuries, as well as the formation of traditional medicine. One of the most prominent alchemists was Paracelsus, the father of the scientific method, who stated unequivocally, "Many have said of alchemy that it is for the making of gold and silver. For me, such is not the aim, but to consider only what virtue and power may lie in medicines." Despite the array of scientific discoveries and practical concepts we have inherited from alchemy, its efforts have always been directed to what is known as the transmutation or transformation of base metals into noble metals, along with the search for a number of abstract substances such as the elixir of life, the philosopher's stone, the panacea, and the alkahest, the universal solvent. Perhaps here it's appropriate to mention that modern physics is already able to convert other metals into gold by radioactive beta decay of Mercury 197, for instance. And although this is an unprofitable process, it implies that the purpose of alchemy, at least for the true alchemists, is not in making physical gold, but something else. We have already mentioned Paracelsus as one of the most prominent alchemists. If we add others such as Albert the Great, Isaac Newton, and Roger Bacon, then not surprisingly, we can establish that they all were figures of exceptional social position, largely due to their recognized and fruitful intellect, and last but not least, they were also highly religious. From the early stages of its existence, not only contemporary psychoanalysis, but also theology, knew that gold, with its nobleness, purity, and unchanging nature, has always been a symbol of the spirit. This is why Paracelsus distinguishes lower and higher alchemy. So, in this video, we will try to briefly and schematically clarify the actual psychological content of the veiled symbolic notions which the alchemists have articulated, and the processes that they have accomplished, or at least attempted. For some, it will be surprising, and for others, quite logical if we implied that the special laboratory in which the alchemical experiments are conducted is the human individual in its entirety, and the special laboratory vessels are the body, certain organs, and some psychological attitudes. Not by accident, alchemy, when consciously conducted, is called the royal art or the masterpiece, magnum opus in Latin. Today, the expression magnum opus is used, for example, to denote the largest masterpiece in an artist's life. As for alchemy, it considers the masterpiece as composed of three main phases. In the early centuries, they were four, defined by their color characteristics: nigredo, or blackening; albedo, whitening; rubedo, reddening. It is considered that at the fourth and final phase, the philosopher's stone, which turns everything into gold, is discovered. In general, these three phases represent the development of a human psyche, which first passes through the realization of its own darkness and the acceptance of it, i.e., nigredo. Then, through humility, it achieves its own purification and receptivity for the light, albedo. The ultimate result is that the light enters the blood of the alchemist, rubedo, thus transforming into a way of living in service of God and man. This type of color differentiation of the phases of alchemical transformation is described in a corresponding symbolic way in the first entirely alchemical text written by the Gnostic Zosism. His Greek terms for the phases are melanosis, leucosis, and iosis. The text is from the 3rd or 4th century, but describes events of the 1st century. In the subsequent development of alchemy and its adaptation to the ever-growing complexity of the human thought process, the color phases are further divided, usually adapted to the universality of the number 7. They are thus bound to the influences of certain planets and the properties of certain metals. And as Paracelsus himself hints, the metals correspond to spiritual qualities. We can quickly sketch the associations as follows. Mercury is the yellow, or brown color represented by the element of Mercury and means a new way of thinking. Venus is the green color represented by the element of copper and means a new way of feeling. Mars is the red color represented by the element of iron and means a new will. Jupiter is the color blue, represented by the element of tin and means overcoming arrogance and criticism. Uranus is the color indigo, represented by the element of zinc and means letting go of all resistance and thus illumination of everything that has so far been considered irrational. Neptune is the violet color, represented by the element of cobalt, and means letting go of human notions and direct connection with spirit. Since alchemy is, in fact, also an ongoing process of seeking, there are variations in the seven-dimensional scheme, which sometimes involve the grey lead of Saturn and the black Pluto with its element of bismuth, and of course, as basic symbols of soul and spirit, the silver moon and the golden sun. Apart from this, some alchemists thought that all metals, or soul qualities, are composed of different proportions of mercury, sulfur, and salt, where gold is the product of their proper mixing. Mercury and sulfur here represent the opposites of the dialectical world, and salt is the element that reconciles and unites them. We will soon be posting the sequel to this video, which will explain the different phases of alchemy in detail and make an unexpected connection to their correspondences in Christianity.